Hey, what's the deal, YouTube? It's your girl, Miss Honey. Welcome back to the channel, you guys. It's your girl, Miss Honey, here with a review for Lovecraft Country, Season 1, Episode 6. This is our flagship season of Lovecraft Country, and this episode is entitled Meet Me in Daegu. When the episode opens, we are inside of a dream, and there is a young woman sitting in a movie theater in 1950s, summer of 1950s, and there's a Judy Garland movie playing. I think it's Meet Me in St. Louis. And there is a couple there that's also in the movie theater, but outside of that, there's no one in there. She looks around after a period of time and the couple is gone, and she stands up. Here comes her favorite part. Clang, clang, clang goes the trolley. Ding, ding, ding goes the bell. She sings down the aisle all the way, swaying back and forth up the stairs to the stage. And once she gets on the stage, she swings her arms wide in front of the movie screen and just twirls and twirls and looks at the ceiling. We cut away to real time, and this same woman, she doesn't look quite as young. In the dream, she was cherub-cheeked and ruby red lips, just rosy, rosy, rosy. Here she looks like an older woman, and she's sitting and she's looking at the same movie, but her eyes are filled with tears. She looks immensely sad. She looks as though she's looking at her life afar off when she looks at the Judy Garland movie, like this is something that's unattainable to her. We then get to see this same young woman. We find out her name is Gia, and Gia is a young Korean woman, a nursing student, and she lives with her mom, whom she calls Uma. Gia is spelled J-I-A-H. Gia is with her mom at home. This is the next day, and they are getting ready to do a bit of work around the house, which includes making kimchi. And Uma, Gia's mom, is making kimchi for the winter, and she's trying out a special recipe in hopes that the kimchi won't spoil through the winter. And kimchi, if I'm not mistaken, is fermented cabbage with spices. It can be very, very spicy. I love it on with greens and things like that. Uma is fretting about the recipe, and she gives Gia a bit of taste, and they have a bit of lighthearted conversation about the recipe and it not being too spicy. And Gia just starts to sort of daydream about what she's going to do after she graduates. After she gets her degree, she's going to buy her mother all the cabbage she wants. And her mother says, "But you haven't graduated yet." And she says, "Well, yeah, that's true, but we could always just borrow some from the neighbors." Well, the energy changes immediately because Uma lets us know that the neighbors have not invited her to a function, a gathering in a great long while. Ever since she got a divorce, they have shunned her. Gia says, "Well, when I get my degree, that will return your favor to our household." And her mother says, "No, what's going to return favor to our household is you bringing men home." What is going on here? We get to see Gia in class. They all have cadavers. They are in lab, if you will, and identifying the organs in the body as students. And here, we fall back into this place where she does seem very young. She does seem, almost high schoolish, but she's, in college courses, obviously, to become a nurse. And all of the girls are chattering about the meetup later on. They're going to all go to later on that night. And that one of the young ladies there, she won't be able to go to the meetup probably because she fell in love. And they all gather around this young woman and just question her about this guy that she's got, stars in her eyes for. They all seem like she's the popular girl, like they look up to her. I don't know if it's because she's found a man or what it is, but the whole while she's telling them about this young man and how she met this young man and how he talks to her, the language that he uses, how he ingratiated himself to her. She's looking at Gia, who is over at her cadaver although she's paying attention to them, she's trying to seem as though she's not involved. She's not gathering with the other girls around this young lady. She's looking from afar. And this young lady is looking directly at Gia. And so they ask her, how did you get this young man? What did you say to this young man to make him fall in love with you? And Gia is really listening intently at this point. Next time we see Gia, she's at the meetup. And it is essentially speed dating. The women sit at the table and a group of men go from table to table and they talk with the woman for a set amount of time. At the ding, they have a card where the woman who has a number, they will either mark the number off or keep the number open. And at the end of the night, the open number that they have, they'll go and they'll talk with that girl. So it's basically the men choosing the women. Gia, I think her initial conversation to the first young man was what she heard this girl say in class. And he gave her an X and moved on. And the second gentleman, she was open and honest about who she was. It was quirky. It was dorky. It was kind of lame. He was like, you get an X, and moved on. The third gentleman, she quoted a line from one of her favorite Judy Garland movies. She said that's from one of my favorite American movies, and he knew the movie. She talked about her favorite song. She has so many, she knows all of them by heart, and he tells her what his favorite song was from the movie. And she thinks, oh, this is it. This is it. We have something in common. We both like American movies, so on and so forth. And he gives her the X and wishes her good luck because it's unacceptable. It's unacceptable. They are showing American movies in the theaters, but America is coming to essentially invade. America is coming under the guise of they're there to help, but there are a lot of Koreans at that time that felt like America was coming to usurp. They were coming to harm them and try to conform their ways. Although music is being played and the movies are being shown, it's frowned upon. So end of the night, she hasn't been picked, of course, and it looks like it's something that always happens to her. Meanwhile, this young lady who was in her class, she's got a date. And she sees that Gia's alone. She wants to invite Gia to come with them. And Gia says, no, I'll be a third wheel. I won't come. And she says, oh, you have to come. And, you know, if nothing else, you can look at him. He's good to look at. And then there's this moment where it kind of turns, where she walks up to Gia a little bit closer, almost in her face, and grabs her arm and turns it over to the underside, sort of drags her finger down the arm and into the palm, and she's coming on to Gia. That's what it looks like. And Gia seems okay with that. Again, I don't know if this young woman is the popular woman in the crowd. I don't know, but she seems fond of Gia. Gia seems enamored with her, and Gia does not go out with them. She sends them on the way. But the next night, we see Gia in a club, and she is full-on grown woman in this club. There is a full band playing, including a flautist. There are people gathered about. It looks like it might be a music club, a place where you go to get drinks and listen to the live band and maybe have dinner. She's beautifully dressed. She's got a beautiful red dress on and a lot more makeup. She really is a beautiful, beautiful woman. The guy at the stage is singing with the full band. The song, I think, was called Bechamel. Bechamel. It was a nice song, and she sees a guy over at the bar, and he looks like he's there to meet someone, and she's there alone to meet someone. In the next scene, we see her entering her home. It's dark, and she's got this man with her. And she goes into her bedroom, this room that we saw her in earlier, and she lights one candle, and that candle lights what seems like 50 other candles around the room. It's very beautiful. It has ambiance. It's low light. It's dark, but it's only candle lit. by many, many candles. So we can still see very well, but still the atmosphere is low light. And she unzips her dress and takes it off, and she's completely nude underneath it. And then she climbs onto this bed, and it's a square bed. It looks quite comfortable. There aren't any pillows or anything. It's almost like a platform. She climbs up on it and she lays sort of lovingly. I mean, just a really beautiful woman, Asian woman. And she lays there lovingly, and he is looking at her like she's the most beautiful thing he's ever seen. And he undresses himself and walks around to the foot of the bed, and she just sort of follows him as he walks around with her eyes. I mean, she is silent, but the way that she is laying and the way that she is looking and the way her eyes are opening and closing, it's very come hither-ish. He tells her how beautiful she is, and then he climbs on top. They get into the pushing and the pulling of the thing, and we can still hear the band playing, the man singing Bechamel, Bechamel, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. He screams out in triumph, and the whole while she has zero facial expression. She had no moans, no groans. She never closed her eyes. She never blinked. It was almost as if Gia's body was there, but she had maybe left it, climbed downstairs to the basement of her spirit, and it was just the body there. And in that moment, we see where he is after he has released himself, and he leans back. He seems almost frozen when it looked like a spider leg in that it was covered with hair, but it was very flexible. It moved, in ripples, and it had a lot of bend to it. It comes from underneath between the two of them. It comes around and jams him in the back, and he screams. And again, Gia does not move. It's just her body there. And then out of her ears, just past her earrings, she's got earrings on, and out of her ears come even smaller ones of these tentacle type arms covered in hair, and they're brown and they're quite hairy, and they go into his ears. And then the song is crescendoing at this point, and then she opens her mouth as he's screaming, and a larger one, the biggest one of all, comes out of her mouth and into his mouth. Except now this one is covered in hair, but it also has barbs on it, and the barbs are in sort of an opposite position. Like they are made to slide in, but they're not made to slide out. And then she has two really small ones come from her eyes and go into his eyes. And in that moment, we see this same man's life flash before his eyes, and apparently Gia's eyes too. We see him meet a woman, marry a woman, have a baby, climb this mountaintop, and scream out when he gets to the top in excitement, Yahoo, Yahoo. And as soon as the largest one, which goes into his mouth and down his belly, it explodes down on top of her. She screamed, Yahoo! She had been inside of that vision of what she saw when the eye tentacles went in. She's still on her back, and she leans up on her elbow. Uma pulls the door open and says 10 more and walks off. Gia says, yes, Uma. At the moment that Uma comes in and she says 10 more, there's a pause, and I can hear the blood from on top of the bed, dripping down into what I perceive to be like a drain. You can hear the blood pooling off of the bed, the platform, like after you turn the shower off. So our next scene, we get to see Gia back in the movie theater, except it's full of people and they're all watching this cartoon. The cartoon itself is playing visually, but through the audio, we hear a lot of Korean, I don't want to say propaganda, but it's their announcement about how to resist the Americans, fight the Americans, and what they're going to do to chase the Americans away. And not fight them, but, combat them coming in and trying to sort of usurp. And the next movie that's going to come over is going to be a Judy Garland movie, which Gia is very excited about because, see, she's back to being looking like schoolgirl Gia. And all of a sudden the movie theater starts to shake a bit and they all run outside, and it is the Americans rolling into town with their tanks, and they have got a Korean gentleman with a bullhorn speaking and translating as they say, "Do not be alarmed. We are here to help you. We are the Americans. Do not be alarmed. We are here to help you. You have nothing to fear. We are the Americans. We are here to help you." And they're throwing all of these flyers, all of these paper bills out at the crowd. And we get to see Gia in the next scene taking a whole handful of these paper bills that she's picked up, and we see her throwing them into the fire. It's Gia's birthday, although she doesn't even quite remember it. It's only when she discovers a special dish that her mom had made right before dinner. She asks about it. "Oh, it's not New Year's. You've made this wonderful dish." And her mom says, "Oh, well, it's your birthday, and I know it's your favorite." And she smiles and she lifts up a big ladle full of it. And her mom can tell something is wrong. And she says, "You don't like it?" And she says, "No, it's delicious. The anchovies are a nice surprise." Now, anchovies, a very small fish. They go and set the table, and her mom can tell that something is going on with Gia, that she has something on her mind. This looks like breakfast, actually, not dinner. Gia is dressed for school. She kneels and she says that anchovies was Uma's husband's favorite. And Uma says, "You remember that?" And she says, "Yes, I remember everything. When I consume their souls, I get their memories. I know everything about them. It stays inside of me." And I thought, oh, so Uma did not get a divorce. Her husband was lost to whatever this is inside of Gia. And so the conversation continues, and what we learn through this conversation is that it looks as though the thing that is inside of Gia is something that her mom has done in some sort of way. And what it looks like is that Uma has gone to this woman who is, I guess in Asian culture, maybe considered like maybe a witch, and she's had this spell casted onto Gia, and the spirit is now inside of Gia. What Uma tells Gia is that it's been nearly a month since you've brought someone home. The spirit that's inside of her is called a Yumiho. Gia is supposed to kill 100 souls, and then Yumiho, the spirit Yumiho, will leave her and she will become human again. She hasn't brought a man home to steal his soul in a month. Obviously, it's something that she doesn't want to do. She wants to be human, but she doesn't want to do this thing. And her mother is pressuring her. Her mother is telling her she's only got a few more to go. And Gia is telling her it's busy with school. There are a lot of wounded out there because they're working in the field now at this point. And she's using this as an excuse. And Uma is telling her, no, it's actually the perfect time because these Americans, they're just like the Japanese. They are raping Korean women all the time. It's a perfect opportunity to give bodies, also it go unnoticed. Gia wants to know, what else did this witch or say to you? And Uma says, all you need to know is that if you want to be human again, you've got to do this thing. And Uma, the pressure that she is putting on Gia. At the same time, it's something about that tenuous conversation between Gia and Uma when she mentions that she killed Uma's husband, that she stole his soul as well. Because Uma said, don't mention that man's name in this house again. Whatever is going on with Gia is Uma's design to keep Gia from being hurt. Gia's at school / work, and it's chaos. The war is in full swing. There are wounded and dead everywhere. The hospital is just complete chaos. There's a gentleman there who needs to have his leg amputated, and of course he's in shock and he's terrified and he's partially violent. Gia and Young-Ani, the one that seems to have all the eyes of all the men. As the young man grabs for Gia in his shock and in his pain, Young-Ani grabs a needle, sedates the guy. And then she checks on Gia immediately, lovingly, to look at her arm. And she said she's going to go get something so they can collectively cut the leg off of this guy. And she goes over to the table and Gia is watching. Young-Ani looks down at these tools and looks up. There's a gentleman there. And at first you think, oh, well, he's a doctor and she's asking him which tool is best. But we see him lean and whisper in her ear. And then we see where Gia and Young-Ani is walking through the town and they're, have their arms locked like good girlfriends. And she's asking if this gentleman is her boyfriend. And she says, oh, he wishes he was my boyfriend. And she says, but he's good looking, something good to look at. And she asked Gia if she wants her to set the two of them up, and she says no. Well, my mom Uma wouldn't like him. He's not Uma's type. Well, what is Uma's type? Why isn't he Uma's type? He's a communist. That's why I can't bring him home to Uma. And she says, well, I just thought because Gia says, I just thought because I saw you guys whispering and talking all the time that you guys were going to get married. And Young-Ani, she scoots Gia off to the side, tells her to shut her mouth. She doesn't know what she's talking about. We're not whispering all the time. We're not talking all the time. Don't you say that. Gia says, I wouldn't tell anybody. I'm not going to say anything about it. You don't have to worry about that from me. And I'm not going to say anything about the fact that you're different either. I don't care. I'm different too. And she says, they get into this whole conversation. It's almost like Young-Ani is seeing Gia's pain and confusion. I think she may be associating that with her own feelings. In other words, she's obviously been attracted. I think Gia is talking about the fact that she is a woman who loves women. Gia is also talking about, the fact that obviously Young-Ani is a part of this this regime that is trying to overthrow what the Americans and the Japanese are doing there. It's hard to tell because Gia's conversation about the fact that she's different and about the fact that her mom has these expectations of her to be a certain way and to have this certain standing, to bring home a good individual, a male that can bring honor to their home. That's important. And Young-Ani is coming from this perspective where you don't have to be what your mom wants you to be. She's projecting all of her fears on you and forcing you to be something that she wishes she was. But you don't have to do that. There's nothing wrong with being different. Of course, Gia is talking about the fact that she has this thing inside of her. This is what makes her different. And Young-Ani is coming from this perspective where she thinks Gia is, so I guess, coming out to her in a way. And before it can get even more confusing for the two of them, before it can go too far between the two of them, a truck races through, and American soldiers are lined up on the street anyway. A truck races through, and they take what looks like to be a Japanese guy out of the back of this truck and stands him up on the back of this truck and throws him up. If you want to see what happens to communists, we'll show you what happens to communists. And they hang the man right there in the street. Young Ani turns to Gia and says, listen, this is what they're doing to our country. The Americans are here, and they watched him hang this man, and they stood by and did nothing. Back at home, we see where Gia is putting candles out, and it's after one of these occasions where she's brought a man home and collected his soul. And we see Uma down on her hands and knees, and she's scrubbing up the floor. Gia has a robe on, but she is a mess. She's covered in someone else's blood and gook. And she's talking to her mother about her father, to her husband, and the man that she killed in this way. And this is what we learn through this whole process. There comes a point where in this conversation where we realize we are not actually talking to Gia. We are talking to the body that is named Gia, but the spirit of the thing is this creature, Yumiho, that lives down inside of her. And this is where we learn the truth of what is going on. This man that her mother married had been raping Gia, and her mother went to this individual who was known to cast spells and fix problems, so to speak. She went to her to ask for a protection for Gia, and the protection was this creature. And if anyone tried to have sex with her daughter or sexually assault her daughter, this creature would appear and then kill them. The benefit for the creature side is that the creature is collecting souls. Now, from what we're learning here, when Uma went to the witch, the spellcaster, and asked for this, the spellcaster said, listen, I can do this thing, but it's going to come at a great price. That great price, Uma is assuming, is the fact that Gia would have to repeatedly kill these men in order to get to this number, which is 100. And in that moment, Uma is hoping that she will actually get her daughter Gia back. Up until this point, what we see with Gia and Uma hasn't been pleasant conversation. It's been cordial conversation to keep peace between them, pass the time. But Uma is really treating Gia in this way that lets us know that it's not Gia that she's cooking for and all of that. She says, I see little pieces of my daughter inside of you. And it's at this moment we realize she's not talking to Gia, her daughter, the daughter that she gave birth to. She's talking to this spirit, Yumiho. Yumiho is upset. He doesn't understand. He's saying, why I don't want to kill. She's at number 99, mind you. I don't want to kill. What if I want to do something else? What if I want to be something else? So this spirit inside of Gia wants to have its own life, wants to do its own thing, wants to move about life in its own way, except for the fact that when climax happens, out comes the hairy tentacles, right? And this spirit is arguing with Uma as if it itself has rights and feelings. Uma says, I know my daughter's in there. I've seen little glimpses of it. And he says, you don't know. You have no idea. You don't know what you're talking about. I have no memories of your daughter, but I have memories of all of the men that I've killed. And Uma is getting more and more agitated, more and more upset. Up until this point, we've seen, yes, Uma, nothing, Uma, and just scurrying off, not wanting to be argumentative to Uma, not wanting to be, to go against Uma. It looks like a human daughter's attempt at showing respect, right? But in this moment, I don't know if it's because she's just killed, she's just taken a soul, and Yumiho is right there on the surface and is angry and has decided after this conversation that they've had with young Ami that he or she, whatever the spirit identifies as, wants to have it out with Uma. But it gets bad. Gia goes over and starts putting the candles out, and she starts singing a nursery rhyme. And Uma says, yeah, there. That's a song that I taught my daughter when she was young, a nursery rhyme that I taught my daughter. See, I know my daughter's in there. I know my daughter can still be saved. See, Uma is feeling regret. She felt like she was doing the right thing to protect her daughter, but the ultimate price of it, the fact that she has not had an actual daughter, but the spirit living inside of her daughter, she's actually raised this spirit up. Yomiho, the spirit Yomiho, she's raised this spirit up. And she just wants to go back, everything to just go back and not have this disgrace. And she used Gia to do that. And so, yeah, that's the nursery rhyme I taught my daughter. This is Uma says, and Yumiho, as Gia lashes out at Uma and tells Uma, that is the nursery rhyme that your husband sung every time he came in to rape me. To rape her. Yumiho says, I consumed his memories. I have all of his memories. He picked you because you were a woman with a young daughter. He knew that you would look the other way and allow him to rape her. Ooh, it's a tough moment. She, up until this point, she had been able to sort of corral Gia / Yumiho. She had been able to push her through, get to this 100, and then we'll deal with it after that. See, Gia suspects something more. Gia suspects there's more just beyond this 100. She suspects that there's something more there. She suspects that there is something that she is not being told. And so she's pushing against it. Outside of the fact that, Gia may or may not want to lose Yumiho. Yumiho may or may not want to lose Gia. The next scene that we see is kind of hard to watch, but it is a scene where we see all of the nurses that are on this particular shift with Gia are in the back of this truck, and they are being brought onto this military, I won't say base, but on the grounds where the military are occupying, sort of in this field, and they want them all to get out the back of this truck. And the way that they're treating them, you can tell that it is something that's not good. And we get to see where they all line them up and get them down on their knees. And then there's an Asian man who is translating, and there is a black man who is talking. And he says that they've intercepted some communications between these hours and these hours, and they've narrowed it down to that shift. So these are all the women that are on the same shift with Gia. And he begins to say, one of you is a communist. Which one of you is it? And he walks up to a young woman. They all look like young students. They all do. And he asks if she was a communist, and she says no. Well, she doesn't. She just shakes her head no, and she's kind of cowering, and he shoots her in the head, and she falls dead. And then he walks down one more. Now, the first young lady is 2 away from Gia. Gia is on the other side of Gia is Yungani. And he goes to the next woman and he says, are you a communist? And she says no. And she's leaning over towards Gia and she's cowering. And he stands up and he goes to shoot her, and the gun jams. And so then he calls for someone else to come over, and guess who it is? It's Tick. And Tick comes over with cold, callous, matter of fact type of way, and he walks right up to this woman and he shoots her. And all of her blood and brains and everything splatters onto Gia, the side of Gia's face and in her hair. And she's screaming, and she and Young Ani are cowering. Don't know, please. And Tick walks right, takes the next step over in front of Gia. Gia's next in line. And he the guy behind him is asking, "Are you a communist?" And Gia says no. She doesn't shake her head no. She says no. And he lifts the gun to shoot her. And Young Ani says, "No, I am the communist. I am the one. I'm the one you're looking for." And then the guy who was doing the talking initially walks around him and takes the butt of his gun and whacks Young Ani and knocks her out. They say, "Get her up," and they throw her in the back of a truck. And Gia is holding on to her coat and her dress. No, wait. Because they're taking her friend away. They're taking her friend away. It's been months since our opening scene, since she did that kill, the first kill that we saw. Mind you, she had 10 more to go. When she was at 90, it's been months since then. And so she's gotten to know this woman. She shares a secret with this woman. 2 secrets, actually. The fact that she was a communist supporter or leading a part of this revolution or this rebellion. And the fact that she knew that the woman also loved women. Okay. They had become very close. And they had been, I don't know if the woman knew about who Gia was. But it's a devastating moment for Gia. Yes, it's a devastating moment for Gia, and Tick's face and his attitude, his demeanor is emblazoned now in Gia's mind. Gia is standing in front of her beloved movie theater, and it's closed down. The writing on the front of the building says that establishment was owned by a communist sympathizer. And it's just another straw on the back of her camel. I mean, she's lost her schoolmates in this bloody way, one of which was her very best friend. And now the movie theater is closed down. It's fall by this time, 1950. And she heads on off to work. And when she gets there, she is helping more wounded soldiers. They're screaming and buzzing about. And there is a soldier in the far off distance that's screaming and wincing in pain and just sort of being loud and cumbersome. It's a black man. And she looks down as she's holding the wound of another wounded soldier, and she looks down and she sees Tick, and she knows him. She knows him as the person that helped take Young Ani away. And she stands up, and it's almost like she's in this tunnel, and that comes to this point, and at the end of this point is Tick. She is so upset, and she is so frustrated and just, angry that she goes outside in the rain with these bloody hands and stands out on the side of the building and almost vibrates with anger and looking at her hands, her bloody hands. And it's almost like she's thinking to herself, can I use these hands to strangle him, to kill him? We see where the next scene is she and Uma having something to eat, and the temperature is completely different after that conversation between Uma and Gia, or essentially between Uma and Yumiho. She says, in this complete silence, they're just eating. She says to Uma, "I found my 100th soul. It's an American soldier," is what she says. And Uma doesn't say anything. When she sees Tick, Tick is putting on glasses. When she initially sees Tick, he's putting on glasses and he's trying to read, just trying to shut everything out and read a little bit, but the glasses are completely smashed and cracked. There's been a bombing, and this is how he ends up there at the hospital. So when we see her again, she is going to change his bed linen, and this is her attempt to get a little closer to him and to sort of size him up a little bit and see if she can get him to this place where she can get this 100th soul, and also avenge her best friend. And as she goes to try to make the bed up, Tick is kind of struggling, and he goes to help her, and she says, "You don't have to do that." And he says, "Oh, well, it gives me something to do, makes me feel useful." And there's this conversation that begins, this blossoming of conversation, that the type of conversation that one thing leads to another thing. He wants her to read to him the last couple of chapters of this book that he can't read because he doesn't have his glasses. And she looks at the cover of the book and she gives it back to him, and she tells him how it all ended. And she tells him, he says, "Oh, really? You read it already?" And she says, "Yes, it was poorly I can't remember what she said, but it's sort of snarky, the comment she says about the book. And she talks about the characters and just how they moved wasn't necessary. It didn't serve the plot line. It had no meaning behind it." And he says, you should read it because the book doesn't end that way. The movie does. It's very different. And she is thrown off a little bit, and slightly intrigued in this moment. He hit the ball over and asked her if she would read the book. She hit the ball back and acted as if she had read the book when she had really saw the movie. And he hits the ball back when he calls her on that. And then he offers her the book. This is why we love Tick. He's a nice guy. He's in a bad situation, but he's a nice guy. And he says, "Take the book, read the last 2 chapters, you will see, and you have to read it now, you have to take it now," especially after they've had this conversation. And she turns and she walks off. She's intrigued, but "I cannot like you, you are the enemy, you kill my best friend." And then the next time we see the two of them, Tick is up and he's a little bit better. He's still on a crutch. And the nursing staff is outside and they're throwing a ball around. And Tick is sitting on a bench with one of his army buddies. And the ball comes over towards Tick and the bench, and he gets up to give it to her. And the army buddy, who's an Asian man, I'm assuming he's Japanese, and he makes a quip about the movies, and she turns and looks at him, and he acts kind of sheepish about it, because it's in this moment she realized that Tick told his friend about her. And she says that she wants to go she went to see another movie, but that movie, she can't see it because the movie theater's closed down because of the war. And Tick tries to kind of lament with her about it must be nice to get away in the dark. I mean, she's beautiful. And she knows a little bit about some of the things that he's reading about, and he likes that. He's intrigued, and he's at war, and what else is it for young people to do? Get to know one another whenever they get a chance to do it. And so this is what's happening. But she's still playing coy, and she's still playing shy, and she goes to walk off once again. And then it comes to her, "Do you guys know Judy Garland?" And they laugh, and she wants to know why they're laughing. And Tick tells her, over in America, it's the only way we would know Judy Garland is if I was her cook, and he, talking about his Asian friend, was her chauffeur. And in America, people of color aren't welcome in their own homeland. they're made to feel different and less than in their own homeland. And she looks at the Asian guy and she says, why don't you stay here after the war? And it's kind of like it's understood that Tick would not necessarily stay there because he's not, as a black man, I'm sure he's not accepted there either. But she looks at the Asian guy like, you could get away with staying here. And he tells her the slang name, the Asian guy tells her the slang name that he is called over in America. And then he tells her the slang name that he is called over there in Korea. He's not welcomed anywhere. The next scene that we see is Gia reading to Tick the last few pages of this book. And he has already told us this book is by Alexander Dumas. And I think it's Count of Monte Cristo, because when she's reading to him, they may be separate books that they're talking about now. But when she's sitting on the edge of his hospital bed and he's there listening to her read, he talks about that being his father's favorite book. And he's not sure why that's his father's favorite book. If it was because it was about an individual that was oppressed and mistreated. It was that had all these horrible things happen to them, or was it because he was a black man? And she said, you should ask him which one. And Tick says, we don't talk very much anymore. And she laments about her mom in that moment. See, so along every step along the way, they're seeing that they have things in common. This is young love. They're slowly but surely falling in love in this moment. It's crazy because is Tick falling in love with Yumiho? Is he falling in love with Gia? Is Gia gone now? We're calling Yumiho Gia, but I'm just wondering what's happening here, because essentially there's this spirit that is occupying Gia's body. And is that who's falling in love with Tick? Is that who Tick is falling in love with? It's weird because it's still love, I guess, but at the same time, you're a whole monster out here. In the next scene, we see where Gia is standing outside of the army base, and she's announcing that she's there to have a night on the town with Atticus Freeman. And the guy at the gate brings her back in through the gate. And the guys are giving, cat calls to her and all of that. And the guy that's being, leading her down to where she's going to meet Atticus is sort of bantering with them, about her being a comfort woman. And they think that this Asian gentleman that's escorting her that she's a comfort woman, that she's a lady of the evening and she's there to service him. And she wants to clear that up, Gia does. And he says, no, it's just that Koreans are not allowed on the base anymore, except for comfort women. And so he leads her to this tent, and he opens the tent up to lead her in, and she is trepidatious. Now, Yumiho is a formidable force. I don't know, though, that he has enough tentacles to help her if she was in a situation where there were 4 or 5 people. But she is right to have trepidation, Yumiho or no. So he says, go on in, and she goes in, and a light comes on, and she's Atticus. And he says yes, and then the lights come on from a movie camera beaming down onto this sheet, and Atticus is standing in front of this white sheet, and he is in his dress greens, I guess, so to speak, and he's got this flower he's got in his hand for her, and she compliments him and he compliments her, and the movie begins, and it's the Gene Kelly movie, Judy Garland movie that she had wanted to see when she discovered that the movie theater was closed down. He has set this up for her, and she wants to know how, and he lets her know that it was his Uncle George. And is he in the movies? And he says no, but he publishes this book, The Negro Travel Guide, and he knows people from all over the place. So they, she's enamored. It's just seats for the two of them. It's this private showing of the movie. And quite an accomplishment for him to have pulled all of this off, being a Negro man. It's quite a nice setup, and Atticus does look good. And they watch the movie, and they have a little kiss afterwards, and it's this whole old movie scene where the light from the movie camera is beaming just past Atticus and Gia onto the screen, so it's almost like the movie is playing on the screen but also on them, and they kiss in that moment. It's quite nice and romantic, and it's one of these starry-eyed moments. And she stands up and she's rubbing her hands as if maybe they were tingling a little bit because she had kissed Atticus. I was like, oh, hold it in, Yumi, hold it in. But he says, are you okay? Are you all right? And she says, I'm just a little cold. So he goes to give her her coat. And she says, but I know what would warm me up. And Atticus is looking at her like, what? Listen, Tick is down for it. When we see Tick again, him and Gia's going into her bedroom. Okay. They getting up on the platform bed, right? This is where it's all supposed to go down. Except when Tick gets into the room with Gia and they start kissing, he backs up off of her a little bit. He wants to tell her something. And she's trying to figure out what he's trying to tell her, because she's in this mode. Like, I'm about to get rid of him. This is going to be my 100th, and I'm going to avenge my friend. Now, she does have these feelings. But she's focused in this moment. And then Tick tells her that he don't mind doing it. He want to do it, but he want to let her know that it would be his first time. And she says, you're a virgin? And he says, yes, I'm a virgin. And she says, well, I'm not. And she goes to proceed on with the process. And he says, that's fine. That's not the issue. I just want to let you know that I've done some horrible things. And I've been able to escape those horrible things when I talk to you. When I'm with you, I'm able to escape those horrible things, right? And listen, Gia can understand. Okay, but she's just listening here. And he says, and I just want you to know that when I see you, when I look in your eyes, you make me feel like a better person, And essentially he's telling her, I guess he really likes her. Like, I'm not just going to get on top of you and do my business. This means something to me. Like, you're going to be my first, and this is why I'm okay with this, because I'm really feeling you like that, right? And so she, straddles him, and they kiss, and then he lays back on he flips her around and lays her down. And remember when we saw her with this other guy, this first guy that we saw her kill, she was motionless. She had zero personality, sex personality at all. Here she is like, oh, she is ravished, Tick is giving her kisses and hugs. And listen, he's a good looking guy. He's muscular, and he's probably grabbing her up, and, and she's into it. She's feeling every moment of it before things can get going too good. You know what I mean? Before he could take off a piece of clothing real good. She tells him to get out now. And then evidently Uma was at the door listening. They're calling him, this slur, this racial slur, and then she's sending him on his way. Get out, and he's grabbing his things. He knows what she's calling him. Okay, Uma started calling him this, and then she kind of co-signed it and sending him on out the door. I think she was trying to say something that would get him gone in this moment. And Tick runs on out, and Uma's standing there. It's like, you're right here at your 100, basically. What are you doing? Like, you should have gotten rid of him. And Yumiho slash Gia tells Uma that I've never felt, this way before. It's been emotionless for me, but now I'm feeling something. I really think I like this guy, and he accepts me for who I am, and I just don't understand these feelings. And of course, Uma is upset. Uma is pissed off at Yumiho. Uma wants Yumiho gone because she thinks that she's going to get Gia back, and then Gia's going to marry somebody respectable, and it's going to make her respectable. Okay? But Yumiho is speaking right now. Yumiho is saying, you summoned me and you reared me. That makes me your daughter. You're a monster. This is what Uma is saying. You're a monster. How could you not kill the man that killed your best friend? You're the monster. You're the monster. It's this crazy conversation where Gia slash Yumiho, this spirit that her mom summoned to protect her, I guess, not realizing it was going to be this whole creature that she was going to have to rear up. And this creature has, evolved and developed, and with feelings and emotions and thoughts and wishes and dreams and, all of these things. And now he's coming to Uma like, I think I love a guy. I think I love this guy, and he makes me feel special. And Uma is like, you're a monster. You're a killer. Like, you're trash. Like, I don't want to have anything to do with you. I just want my daughter back. And Yumiho is like, you raised me, you reared me. I'm your child just as much as she was, just as much as Gia was. And Uma hauls off and spits into Gia's face, and Gia, Yumiho, had grappled onto her mom and is down on her knees in front of her mom, and her mom takes this opportunity. Uma takes this opportunity to spit on Yumiho in this way that is saying, without this 100, I'll not accept you. No, I don't accept you. I summoned you, but I don't accept you. I want the old daughter back. I want that back. It's crazy. The next day, Gia returns to the military base. It's daytime now, and she's standing there waiting on Atticus, and Atticus comes out, and he comes out hot as fish grease, baby. He is walking, baby, and them lips is tight. Okay? And he tells her, you need to go. You are not welcome here. You need to go. And she screams out when he walks past her, and he's going to go back into the base, you killed my best friend. And it freezes him. And he turns around and he looks at her. And listen, she called him a slur. I believe a Korean racial slur. And so he mad about that too. And he mad about the fact that she brought him in, under this guise, and then kicked him out like he was being inappropriate with her. But now to hear what she is saying, it stops him in his tracks. And he turns around and looking at her like, what are you talking about? And she tells him about how it all went down, and that he killed her best friend. And Tick says she was a communist sympathizer. She says, whatever you got to tell yourself to make yourself feel better. You knew this whole time and you didn't tell me. And by this time, she's upset too, and she's angry too, but it's starting to break in her a little bit. It's starting to break in her a little bit. And she tells him that she was going to kill him. When she first saw him, the pain shot through her, the anger shot through her like lightning. And she had made up in her mind that she was going to kill him and avenge her friend. Why didn't you? Why didn't you kill me? Why would you go out with me? Because I was going to kill you. But I realized that this war changed you. That, she referenced how the way he sees her, makes her feel like she's human as well, makes her feel better as well, makes her feel more valuable as well. And she says to him, I see now that you are not a monster. We are not monsters. We're not the monsters that they say we are. And from Tick's perspective, maybe he is taking it in this way because the Koreans are being seen in a certain light. So maybe he's taking that as what she's saying. We're not the monsters, but she is a literal monster. She is a literal monster. Tick has wooed and fell in love with a monster, an actual creature. It's just in the form of a beautiful woman. But here comes these emotions that she is giving to him, and she's telling him that she is falling in love with him and that he makes her feel happy and better and less monsterish. And it breaks him. He breaks him. It's like this reconciliation that happens when there is this acknowledgement that they both have done harm. He's not really sure the full extent of what she has done. It doesn't look like it. He kisses her up, and then they go back to this movie theater where he showed the Judy Garland movie, and there on the floor they make love. And this time she sort of controls herself because obviously Tick is a virgin, so it won't take long for him to get to where he needs to be. You know what I mean? So it doesn't have to be this vigorous thing where, the hairy arms come out, right? And so she sort of takes the gear shift, so to speak, and tells him to relax, and, she doesn't want to hurt him. And it happens really quickly. It's all very, nice. And she hugs him up and loves him up, and they kiss. And we see where she goes home. And this is the next day after she's come from work/school. She comes in, and Uma is there, and she's preparing something in the living room, and Gia almost walks past her, and she says, "You can't ignore me forever." And then so Uma gets up to walk off, and she stops Uma, and she tells Uma that she can control her tales with this guy, with Atticus, and that she loves him. And so this is what it is. They're tails, not arms, not tentacles. They're tails. And so Uma now refuses to talk to Gia as though she's Gia. She only talks to Gia now as Yumiho. And she says, not only do you make my daughter a monster, but you also make her a whore. And it's this weird moment because you're the one that summoned this creature. You're the reason that this creature is here, Uma. Well, Yomiho says, you told me that I was a monster and that I would never have, I don't have emotions and I don't have feelings, and that no one would ever love me. But Atticus loves me, and young Ami loved me. So it's not true. I don't have to be this monster that you're telling me that I am. I have emotions, I have feelings, and people do love me. It's a moment. It really is. And then we see where Yomiho/Gia and Tick are having fun together, and they're dating, and there's this whole thing where they are falling madly, sweetly in love. And we see where she's reading this Korean fairy tale, so to speak, and she talks about the Yumiho, which is a 9-tailed fox spirit that takes the form of a woman to avenge the wrongs of men. I think the point of this episode is to show us this side of Atticus, and show us this loving side of Yumiho, who Gia is, and make us sort of fall in love with the idea of Atticus and this and Gia. But I like Uma. I cannot forget that Gia is a whole monster. Like, I like her. I do. I like her, but I cannot forget that she's a monster. Well, as she's reading this book, she tells Tick that Tick wants to talk to her now. She's reading this book to him because her Uma said to her the last time that they talked, "Have you told him? Have you told him who you are, what you are?" And it kind of silenced Gia, because she knew she hadn't told him, and she realized in that moment that the moment she does tell him, that he may feel very differently about her. So she's reading him this sort of story about the Yumiho, in the hopes that that will lead to conversations where she could tell him a little bit more about what that is, and who that is, and who that is in her life, you know. So Tick tells her in this moment that she's trying to convey over what a Yumiho is, that he has saved up enough points and he gets to go home. And you know, she feels a type of way about it. And she gets up and she says, "Oh, well, that's nice." And he says, "Oh, I could stay." She says, "No, you hate this war." And Tick says, well, come with me then. And she says, "No, listen, there's some things about me you don't know." And he takes her face up and he kisses her deeply. This is like the third time that Tick has cried in this episode, mind you. Very emotional, very emotionally available, it seems. And he says, I don't care about anything bad that you've done. I love you and I want to be with you, you know, that none of that bothers me. And it's great because, yeah, they both have done these monstrous things and they both have sort of been able to overcome it. They get to this point where, you know, they start kissing, and she, you know, lays down, and this go round she's on the bottom. And, you know, Tick has added some things to his repertoire. Tick is doing some things that he, you know, says that he's not a new anymore to this thing. And they get into the push and the pull of the thing, and she is feeling absolutely wonderful and fabulous because, again, Tick is a good looking man. He's fine. And Tick is working it, baby. He is getting it going. Yeah, boy. He is in the swing of things, and Gia is feeling everything, picking up everything he is putting down. He throw it, she throwing it back, boy. And then we see the tails, and they come from her ears. No one says anything. Everyone's got their eyes closed. They're riding the wave of passion. They come from her ears, and they're coming from, the big one didn't come from her mouth. That didn't happen. But they come out of her eyes and out of her other orifice down below. And she is like, no, and she's reaching and she's grabbing at them and pulling them back. And the ones from her eyes shoot out and shoot into Tick's eyes. And she sees Tick with his mom, and Tick reading as a young boy, and Tick getting beat as a young boy. She sees Tick in the bed with a darker skinned woman. She sees Tick getting baptized. She sees Tick, what looks like him, taking his last breath. And by this time, she has booted him with her feet over her head and onto the floor behind her. And she's just flipped around on that elbow, and he is on the floor, and he is screaming, "What are you? What have you done? What is that? What are you doing?" And he's screaming, and she's saying, "Don't go home." And he is screaming, "What the F are you talking about? Don't go home. Don't go home. You shouldn't go home," because she saw him getting on a bus to Chicago. "And don't go home. You'll be killed. If you go home, you'll die." And he's saying, "Stay the F away from me. Get the F away from me." And he gathers up his things. But booty ball naked, and has all them clothes clumped in front of him, in front of his package, and he runs out of the house naked, but booty ball naked. Okay. And the last thing she says, no, wait, I'm a Yumi ho. Oh my gosh. And she's just standing there, just defeated. And later on, Uma comes home and she goes into another room, and there is Gia sitting there, and she is crying, and she is so upset. It's like something bad happened at prom. And she says, Uma. And Uma has just a little bit of pity on her and goes over and hugs her up. It feels like Uma is just doing this so she can get that 100th under her. I don't know for sure what is going to happen when she gets this 100th soul in her under her belt, but somehow it tells me that it benefits Uma way more than it benefits Gia. Because Gia, the human, hasn't lived in what looks like 18, 20, 21 years. That this creature is who Uma raised. So I don't think it's about getting Gia back. It's something else that Uma is going to garner from this whole situation. So we see where Gia and her Uma are walking up a snowy hill, and they're going back to this woman that helped Uma summon the fox spirit, and they want to have a conversation with her. When they get to the top of the hill, there's this woman there, and she's in all, cream, and Gia looks over and she sees a vision of a fox, an actual fox with a furry tail. And Uma tells her to come forward, and they both walk up and they kneel down in front of this woman. And the woman opens up her hands and sort of summons the winds to blow, and there's cherry blossoms blowing everywhere, or Japanese blossoms. And she says, you've come to me a second time. You expect the price to be different, and you haven't fulfilled the price of the first time that you've come. And Uma says, I know, I'll pay the price. I will pay the price for her. And Gia looks over, and I do too, because this is a change in Uma. Uma seems to be sympathizing. Uma seems to be empathizing. Uma seems to truly love the Yumiho as her daughter. And she wants to take it on the chin. Just, hey, if you want anybody to pay the price, I'll take the brunt of that. The woman says, what do you want to know? You've made it to 99. You haven't even fulfilled yet. She's talking to Gia now. That which you're supposed to do. And Gia says she had an encounter with a man, and she saw his death, and it was not by her own hand. And the woman is just listening, and she wants to know if this man really dies. And the woman walks off, and she lights a piece of paper on fire, and the ash from the paper is glowing and blowing about. And then she says to Gia, she says, you have not fully become the darkness that you're supposed to become. And Gia says, will Atticus die? And the woman says, you will see many deaths before it's all said and done. You will see many deaths. And the episode goes off. Cinnamon, where you gonna run to? Oh, Cinnamon, where you gonna run to? This is a crazy episode. And I think it's probably one of the least popular episodes in this first season, because maybe it was in another language, so they required you to read a lot more. But I quite enjoyed it. Now, when I went into episode 7, I felt a little bit differently about Tick, because I feel like Tick came into, having come from Korea to Chicago, or come from Korea to Florida, and then Florida to Chicago. He had seen some things already. So a lot of the things that he saw in episode 1 and in episode 2 should not necessarily have been a shock to him. But perhaps Tick does not remember what happened to him. Maybe it's a lot like what happened to Letty and George after that first encounter with the Shogoffs. I don't know. If Tick remembers this, Gia, this Yomiho character, especially since he had feelings for her. It just seems odd, that it hasn't come up before now. And that may explain why he's not as taken aback as Letty and some of the other characters are about what has happened so far. I thought it was a good love story. It played out like a fable almost. If you've ever read African stories or Asian stories, these fables that's supposed to give meaning, it kind of played out in that way. And I'm interested in seeing if Gia ever gets her 100th soul, and if so, she's at 99 now. If so, if the next time we see Gia, it will truly be Gia, and not Yumiho in the body of a Gia, so to speak. You guys tell me what you think of this episode. I'd love to hear it. Put it down below. I'm sure I missed some things. I would love to hear what those things are. Did this episode resonate with you guys at all? Did you find that this was a sleeper episode for you? I found it quite entertaining, and watching it back a second and a third time, I learned a lot about the Gia character. When it first played for me, I don't think I grasped fully that this was Yumiho. This is this nine-tailed fox spirit that essentially Tick has fallen in love with. And I don't know if this whole thing plays into who he is and his bloodline as of yet. For you to be all the way halfway across the world and you meet a nine-tailed fox spirit and survive. Yeah, it's worth mentioning. You guys tell me what you think. Put it down below. And until next time, honeybees. Mwah, mwah, mwah. I'll holla.